Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in occupational therapy.
Well, that's a bit of a long story, but yeah, I'll tell it. So, um, I've been an occupational therapist since 2005. Yeah. And I didn't come to it a real traditional route because I did my undergrad and graduated with a teaching degree. But when my first son was born, he has cerebral palsy, and he has the kind that affects pretty much his whole body, his hands and his feet and his speech. Um, and so teaching just was not going to work because a teacher works 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and doesn't have a flexible schedule. And you got to be there for the students when they're there, and so that was not going to work. So I kind of, I was home raising my kids for a while, and then I met a great occupational therapist. Her name is Lucretia Berg. She teaches at Eastern Washington University now, and I just loved what she did. It was all the things that I had loved about teaching, plus getting to work one-on-one with people and really connect with people where they're at and have this beautiful flexibility in your work life. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe this is for me. And I had originally thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, and but OT is my thing. Like being able to just connect with people in the middle of their messy real lives and help them, kind of be a part of them solving the problems that matter to them. Like it's the best work. Like,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, I'm just really lucky to get to do this work. And I've worked in early intervention. So I've worked with babies, so 0 to 3, and kind of part of that big life quake time when parents are figuring out that um, things need to things are going to look different, and they got to rebuild their dreams, but they got to still have dreams. And I worked at Provale, which is a large nonprofit multi-service organization that has a therapeutic and assistive technology clinic where I work, but also does supported living and supported employment. So that's like babies through old people. And I loved that job. That was a great job. And now I have a private practice, Clear Path Occupational Therapy. I work with people at home. My passion is seating and wheeled mobility. So I'm kind of a techie nerd person.
Mhm.
um, Seating and wheeled mobility and supported lying, helping people be comfortable and well supported so they could sleep good at night. And I'm also working for a company called Rehab Without Walls, where I get to do neuro rehab, which is everything brain and nerves. So people who've had a head injury or maybe a spinal cord injury or they've had a brain tumor. Yeah, all things nerves and brain. And that's great work too. So yeah, I consider myself super fortunate to get to do this work.
Mhm. Yeah,
Sorry,
because
that was a lot of talking. I was
yeah,
like,
that
ah.
yeah, that was you were literally jumping into my next question, which is
I'm
like
sorry.
what
I've never
sorts of
done this before. This is my first time being on a podcast.
yeah, that's all right. What my next question was gonna be is like what sorts of work do you do at as an occupational therapist?
Ah, okay. Um, I do a lot of different kinds of work. So sometimes it's easier to talk about the work based on sort of like what your patient population is, but in general, occupational therapy is connecting with people where they're at for the things in their daily life that they want and need to do. So for some people, it's relearning how to do something a new way because they have a different body after an injury. For some people, it's learning how to do things for the first time. Sometimes we're working on adapting the task, like sometimes we're working on building strength. Sometimes we're working on adapting the environment. So what kind of work that I do depends on who I'm working with. So I'm always connecting with people around the things that they want and need to do. Maybe if I'm working with a school age child, we might be figuring out how to participate in a sport that they want to participate in. Or I might be working on maybe somebody's had a stroke and they can't use one arm, and so they're learning how to do their regular things like getting dressed and eating and cooking food and going to the bathroom and using their computer and using their phone a new way. Other times, we're helping people break things down into manageable steps and make a plan because of where they are with their mental health. Things have gotten really overwhelming, and they need some strategies for being able to do the things that are important to them. So the what can look a lot different depending on like what group of people you're working with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. My next question is, what sorts of things do you look for when, you're sort of what sorts of things do you look for when looking at whether a patient is independent and can do the tasks on their own? In other words, what tools and strategies do you use?
Can you give me a concrete example?
Like, for example,
I mean, that's such a good question. It's like I want to answer it in
for
context.
for example, like let's say a patient has like you mentioned, a spinal cord injury, or something like that, and can't move his arms or his legs. So like what do you do to like sort of regain that mobility that they once lost before the injury?
Right. Yeah. So in that example, where somebody's had a spinal cord injury, you usually have some pretty good information from their doctors about exactly what the injury looks like and where it is. And so you can go into the treatment with some good knowledge, like this person is completely capable above their level of injury. So maybe they had an injury at the mid chest level and they can use their shoulders, but not their hands, or they can use their head. And so you kind of look at what the person's assets are and how to leverage those towards what they want to do. Sometimes you don't have clear information because how and when the brain recovers from a head injury, for example, we can't completely predict what that recovery is going to look like. So sometimes it's more discovery that you go on with your patient. For a person with a spinal cord injury that is a complete injury, you have to find a new way of doing things. So we're not going to be like building up the person's strength in their legs if they have no feeling and no muscle activity in their legs. We're going to be working on finding a way for them to be able to get dressed using what they do have, for example. But for every patient, as much as possible, you want them to learn to be the boss of themselves, to direct their own care. So even for somebody whose injury is like here, you want them for the maximum extent possible for them to be able to direct others to do the things that they need done for them if they can't do them for themselves. So it's always this, to the most extent possible, how do we empower this person to be able to ask for what they need and to direct what they need, even if they can't do all the things for themselves. You want to help them do as much as they can for themselves, but also to be in charge of themselves. So if all you can move is your eyes, you can use an eye gaze communication device. You can work out with the people who support you, how you're going to do it when you don't have your device, and how you like things done for you. So kind of starting with, you use the word patient. A lot of times I use the word client. So starting with the person and what they want and need to do, how can they learn to do those things in the context that they're living in, and direct their supporters where they need something done. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. My next question is, what sorts of stakeholders do you partner with in the OT realm? Is it, the school district? Is it the parents? Is it the patient? Who's like your day-to-day sort of people?
Right. Yeah. So in my job that I have right now, or my two jobs, my private practice and working for Rehab Without Walls. So there's the client or the patient, and then there's their first circle of support. So who's at home with them? Maybe their spouse, maybe their kids, maybe their brothers and sisters. If they're in school, it's their school team. So maybe their teacher, maybe their friends at school. Sometimes people have therapists at school. So kind of that next circle. Sometimes if somebody's working on returning to work, like their boss or their coworkers, and that's really directed by the patient, like who they identify as their allies, and who they want drawn into problem solving and support. I also connect with rehab doctors, so physiatrists and neurologists, with physical therapists, speech therapists, social workers, counselors. Sometimes there are equipment needs. Somebody might need a wheelchair or other mobility device, and we need to figure out what's the best fit, what kind of features we want. And so we'll be working with all of those stakeholders, and a DME provider, ATP. So the person who, oversimplifying, but the salesperson, part of the role. Do you use any mobility aids yourself, or anybody who does?
Well, I use a powered wheelchair,
Okay.
and a walker, which is like I'm not sure what the brand is called. It's like a Maywalk 3000.
Yeah,
or,
I know that
or,
one.
or something that they gave it to me like a couple of years ago. And so, but yeah, I've been using those, and I also have an easy stander. You can't see it because of my Zoom background, but it kind of helps me stand and provide support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're familiar with that process where you meet with your therapist about what your needs are, and also with the DME provider. And you guys are a team in figuring out what equipment is going to meet those needs, and then the whole process to get the signatures and the funding authorization, and then the order and the delivery and the fitting. And
Yeah,
um,
yeah. The whole process. Yeah.
the whole process, yes. Not everybody realizes that it's a process, but it's very much a process. Um, and so all of those players are part of the people that I connect with on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, how can occupational therapy help a patient live the best quality of life? You know, how can it sort of make a difference in their lives?
I think, I think the best place to start is making sure that you're having those good conversations, those good connections at the beginning about what really matters to the person, and that you're working on things that make a difference for them in their life, because that's how you improve quality of life. If I work on let's see, if I work on stacking cones, that might be good exercise, but maybe it doesn't fit for the person's daily life. Maybe there's something else that matters more to them. Maybe they care more about cooking something, and we should be working in that context, for example. Or maybe they really need to figure out a way to use their phone, and their hand doesn't work the way it used to. And so maybe it's better for us to be working on that. I guess, how do you make a difference in a person's quality of life and daily life? I think it's really hearing, and then really listening to what the person wants, what their goals are, and then helping them break it down into actionable steps, and being creative and collaborating with your patient and with their support systems, and how to move that direction. And it ends up being super individualized, which is something that I love about this work. Um, you really have to be willing to meet the person where they're at, and you really get to be creative. Like it's just I think that's what I love about it. It's not like a recipe card. Like, you can't open to the page of the person who had a stroke and is weak on their left side, because no two people are exactly the same. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, you can learn a lot and you have some guidance, and then you take that knowledge that you have, that science background that you have, and you apply it to this unique and complex person that you're partnering with to help them move in the direction that they want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yep.